welcome to Hoffman's Hot Seat. I'm Tom Hoffman with One-to-One Media. Joining me today is Gary Schwartz, Senior Vice President of Marketing at Confirmit. Today we'll be discussing trends that are influencing the kind of functionality that customers are seeking from customer experience management tools. Gary, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Tom. Thanks very much for having me today.
Gary, what trends are influencing the kind of functionality that customers are seeking from customer experience management tools?
Well, Tom, there are three key trends that we're seeing at the moment. The first is that we are seeing companies or pockets within companies who are newly implementing voice of the customer programs or customer experience management programs. They're kind of dipping their toe into the water. And what they're looking for is a solution that enables them to manage their risk and deliver a real return on their investment more quickly. So they're looking to have some security with regard to a question set, the reports, and a very rapid implementation that'll allow them to deliver results into the business very quickly. That's one trend that we're seeing. Another trend that we're seeing is that companies are looking increasingly for flexibility in delivery of the data, the reports, the analysis to their business users. That really varies greatly within companies, widely different user preferences. And what we see in the market is that many tools focus online delivery because they tend to be web-based tools. What we're seeing is that the ease of generating, for example, PowerPoint presentations is increasingly important. And we think of this as the democratizing of the delivery of data so that business users can receive it the way they want it, when they want it. So what we're seeing is a focus not only on delivery of online dashboards, although that continues to be important, but in the ability to create presentations, to update those presentations quickly with live data as trends go on so that executives can see that data. And then this also goes hand in hand with what we think of as the democratization of data collection, or you might think of that as multi-channel data collection, which companies also increasingly expect. The third trend that we're seeing is that as things change, as more data collection tools might become popular, the iPhone is a good example of that, what we're seeing is that companies are asking us for a good degree of nimbleness and flexibility in the ability to quickly add functionality, and that's particularly true with regard to data collection channels. And they're looking for partners who can quickly respond to their needs, not those who are just stuck in long product release cycles.
How are trends in the contact center impacting functionality requirements?
Tom, in the contact center, of course, increased agent productivity is always an issue. What we're seeing is that there's an increased understanding that the contact center greatly impacts customer satisfaction, and that, of course, impacts customer loyalty and advocacy. And so therefore what we're seeing is a move to incorporate these voice of the customer programs into the contact center's QA processes. And what that really means is a move from the internal analytics metrics to more customer-facing metrics. For example, many contact center metrics focus on things like length of call, time to get to a live person, call abandonment, and so on. And those are internal cost metrics. There's another metric, the first call resolution metric, or first contact resolution metric, that determines the agent's effectiveness in being able to resolve customer problems. Unfortunately, in most cases, it's the agent that determines that metric in terms of how the contact center tracks things. And what we find is it's really the customer who determines whether their issue was resolved on that first call. And so incorporating voice of the customer into those processes allows the customer to be the person who answers that question, and therefore improves the QA for the contact center. Second aspect to that is, as I had mentioned earlier, this democratization of data collection. Multi-channel feedback is increasingly important in the contact center. So rather than hope that you can capture your customer's email address and then send an invitation to talk about, well, how was that contact yesterday? The ability to have, for example, IVR as a data collection method is very important, because when you've got your customer on the phone, if you can move them seamlessly into a feedback questionnaire through the IVR channel, that way you've kept that customer on the phone and you've been able to increase the reach of your customer feedback program.
What are some gaps you're seeing in terms of how organizations are addressing customer experience management, and what are some areas for improvement?
What we're seeing is really a range of different approaches. So while there is an increased drive to standardize on a stable, reliable software product across the enterprise, many companies are looking at their very first implementations and therefore they're looking to areas where they can deliver meaningful results quickly. In this case, what they're doing is they're examining their overall customer experience and then looking at key experiences first, perhaps those experiences that have the biggest impact on satisfaction, loyalty, and advocacy. What we're seeing is that in many cases, this is within the contact center. With regards to areas of improvement, I think I would have some advice to offer here, which is that companies should ensure that their voice of the customer metrics are well mapped to the key business performance metrics. And then this will help you build the financial justification to roll out such programs across the enterprise. And if I can speak about one customer experience of ours, one of our customers was looking to understand the drivers behind customer satisfaction within their contact center. So they recorded the scores rigorously and wanted to understand what was changing that. And that was meaningful to them because they were about to embark on a program to potentially add more staff or add another call center to their business, which would have had a big cost impact to the business. When they went through this and did a correlation of trying to understand the drivers behind satisfaction, they found that getting to a live person on the phone actually correlated least closely to satisfaction. And what correlated most closely to satisfaction was a sense that their customers' time was well spent. That was A, it was a big surprise for them, and B, it had a big impact on their resource allocation, because had they gone with their instinct, which was we got to get people onto the phone to live people more quickly, they would have actually achieved the opposite had they incentivized agents to get off calls in order to answer new calls, or they would have spent a lot of money needlessly adding a new contact center. What they did instead was to allocate those resources to creating a program to help their agents be more empowered and productive in responding to their customers' issues. And that made a big difference in terms of satisfaction and therefore the business results. One other piece of advice is to close the loop with the customer. Research that we see shows that while 95% of enterprise collect customer feedback in some way or another, only 5% of them actually tell the customer what they've done with the feedback. To me, that boggles the mind that you would collect the data without actually letting your customer know what's happening. One thing that we see is that the biggest incentive to get people to continue to participate in feedback programs is to let them know what's happening with the feedback. And in many cases, where you find areas of severe customer dissatisfaction, you'll want to have an automated alert system set up so that you can directly contact those customers to fix them. And some of our clients tell us that, in fact, customer satisfaction is much higher when a customer's had a poor experience that's then been fixed than it is for all the rest of the customer base. And in addition to that, it's possible to tell your customers in aggregate effectively to use this as a marketing tool to say, this is what you've told us, we've listened to your feedback, and this is what we're doing with it. So closing the loop with the customer base, letting them know what you've done with the feedback, is key to keeping these programs relevant for not only the business, but also for your customers.
To learn more about relationship strategy, visit www.one2onemedia.com.